remember being an 8, 9, 10-year-old boy. I remember waking up on Black Friday. I remember waiting to see the Cornhuskers take the field and knowing as a young kid, even in New York City, even in Pennsylvania, that band on that helmet meant the very best of the very best of the very best. And to every 9-year-old, 10-year-old, 11-year-old kid in the state of Nebraska and across the country, we will not rest until that means that to you. So thank you guys very much.
Welcome to the Go Big Redcast with Dave, Honky, Boomer, and Redcast Rob.
Welcome to the Go Big Redcast. I'm your host, Honky, and I'm with Redcast Rob.
Well, I would just like to say that while Dave is not here, everything, as far as we know, is good with him, and he should be joining us later. And I would hate to give out any bad news prematurely, as I wouldn't want to throw any egg on my own face or anything like that.
Sure. With Boomer too.
Well, I'd just like to send a quick message to Creighton. Would you knock off these losses here? You're really kind of doing a number on our tier 1 wins for basketball this season, guys. Come on, pick up the pace.
Yeah, my goodness. What did we do? Did we break them?
We must have. There's no other answer for it. I mean, they haven't won since. And
they dropped out of the rankings this week.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, Arizona boat raced them. Arizona boat raced Indiana. You know, Nebraska loses by 1 score, of course, to Purdue. Purdue is ranked number 1. Arizona only goes up 2 places in the standings, or 1 place in the rankings. I don't understand college football. I don't understand the AP voting.
Well, that's college basketball, but
yeah.
Regardless, we'll get to that, and we'll get to all the other things that are going on right now in Husker Nation. Before we do, let's talk about a couple of the upcoming episodes and some of our sponsors here. On Thursday of this week at 8:30, we're bringing back the 2nd season of the Fan Forum. So Ken and Scott McCone of the Generation Red podcast, the Kettle Corn Husker Fan podcast, the father-son podcasters are going to be joining us. So that's Thursday at 8:30 p.m. live. Next up is the Redcast Bowl Pick'em. Now, Dave, I think Dave's still planning to be on this tonight. If not, we can just kind of say what this is. He just got this thing set up this morning, and I think I've already seen about 20 or so people that have joined it. You can get to it off of the links on social media that we have, but this is really cool. This is the first year where we have, I think, some legit prizes. In the past, one of them was a picture of me, handing out some shrimp cocktail. This is actual prizes.
Oh, you weren't handing it out. You were just eating it.
Yeah, I was just eating it. That's right. But this time we have Alumni Hall giving out $50 gift card to the winner, $25 gift card to second place. We'll also have additional prizes. I'm sure some Redcast swag and all that. So get yourself signed up for that. But the first game, I think, is the 16th. So that would be this Friday or Saturday. But yeah, go ahead, get yourself signed up for that. And
it looks like Jack Mitchell might be joining our Bowl Pick'em too. I just tweeted it out to him, and he liked the tweet. So, Jack, if you're listening, we'd love to beat up on you in the Bowl Pick'em there. So,
there you go. Well, thank you to Alumni Hall there for sponsoring that. Thank you for Alumni Hall being a sponsor, period, here with their 2 Lincoln locations, downtown 1120p and South Point Pavilions behind and south of Barnes & Noble. This weekend, had a chance to head down to the Alumni Hall right before the basketball game, the one that's downtown, and meet up with some of the Pipeline players that are selling the Pipeline jerky. So here's a photo. It was me with my twin, Bryce Benhart. You can barely tell any difference. But it was a lot of fun there. And while you're at it, you can go to pipeline.jerky.com, use Redcast at checkout. You get 10% off on your
like
order.
Danny DeVito and Arnold Schwarzenegger right there.
Yes, that's my best Arnold. And then Smack and Smooch custom shirt specialty items. You can find them at Smack and Smooch on Facebook and Twitter. That's where we get all our great shirts and koozies and all that good stuff. And last but not least, hailvarsity.com/subscribe. Use Redcast at checkout. Get 10% off your annual subscription. So with that, we have Dave back here. Dave, can you hear us?
Hey, what's up, guys? How's it going?
How you doing, buddy?
Doing good. Just a very busy holiday season and couldn't quite get back in time. So I apologize, guys. But, it's that time of year.
Yeah. Well, we just got through all the
good. I hate that stuff anyway, so it's good.
Well, but
stuff
one
that
of
makes
them,
money, I really don't want to talk about.
And one of them, maybe you can talk a little bit about, is that we did put up the bowl pick'em. So that alumni hall is going to be giving out some actual prizes this year.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's the first time, right? I mean, before we've handed out pictures of Honky eating spoiled shrimp and I don't know, guest appearances on the show, but now you actually can make real money here. There's gift cards at Alumni Hall. That's awesome. So yeah, looking forward to that. Bowl season kicks off on Friday. Is that right, guys?
Yeah, I think so.
I was looking at the schedule, and Mountain Time, me and Rob can watch a bowl game at like 9:30 on Friday morning. I'm like, why am I watching a bowl game at 9:30 on Friday morning? I don't know.
And why would you want to hang out with me at 9:30 on a Friday morning?
I'm not watching it with you. That's for sure.
Hey, you know what though, Dave? We have watched the NCAA tournament that early in the morning together on multiple.
Oh
occasions.
Yeah. That's legit. Well, it's 10 o'clock usually, tournament, but 9:30 here Mountain Time Friday. So if you're not doing anything on Friday morning, go ahead and start enjoying bowl season. But looking forward to the Redcast Bowl Pick'em. I haven't even made my selections yet, but I'll be in there. And I don't know if Rob or Boomer actually has the results. Have we talked about the winners of the actual regular season Pick'em contest?
We should probably do that one of these days. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it is final. So we might want to bring that up, but
I don't know. I stopped picking so long ago. I don't even remember anymore. So
well, Rob, you're quite certain that you had won our actual Betcast.
I did, Dave.
I think we probably evened out on that, huh?
You gave yourself an extra win, but percentage points.
All right, so let's eliminate that extra win, Rob. And what's the final score?
I think we tied.
That's correct, Rob. Yeah, that's correct. And just because you took a week off.
I didn't. We all took a week off.
I did not take a week off.
Sigh.
Anyway, I do have the winner of the Pick'em contest. So there we are. It is Rob Holo 423.
Rob, that's not you, obviously.
No.
Yeah. That's it. Yeah, that's the ticket. I with my wife, Morgan Fairchild.
So Rob finished 26. What about yourself and me and
I was
Skip?
19th. Dave, you were 14th. We were just a little around 500 each. Producer Skip won for the Redcast, finishing 9th. 162
That's
of
pretty
150. Good. So yep. So reasonable.
All right, but
a lot better than he did on our actual pick'ems during the year. So
let's make sure we can make sure that Rob Julio 423 is that
yes,
right?
it was a tight squeeze. He beat Husker Brad by one game, so it was very close.
All right. Well, I think our bet was, or our prize was actually be on the show, correct?
Well, that was second prize. First prize means you didn't have to be on the
show. Probably a good idea. But anyway, Honky, yes, the Capital One Bowl Pick'em is live. Please join up, and the games start on Friday morning. So get in now.
And what is our group again there, Dave?
It's the Go Big Redcast Bowl Pick'em.
Okay, and that's just what it's called on ESPN.
ESPN, right?
Yeah. Join the Go Big Redcast Bowl Pick'em.
Okay.
Yep. Should be able to click on that on your Twitter feed, and you're good to go.
Yep, it's our pinned tweet right now, and will be for the next couple days. So head over to our Twitter, and you'll get that from there. So, well, should we go into some tweets of the week here and start kind of going over all the updates from the last week? We'll start here with a week ago we sent out a poll, and it was what the CU Nebraska hashtag should be. Now, as we all remember from 2019, it was hashtag CU Redout. But I think that that's time to retire that one. That was a loss anyway, so it's time to move on and get a new one out there. So we had a lot of good responses last week, a lot of them. The one that got the highest vote was Make Boulder Red Again, and then of all the other ones that came in that people just wrote in, we did See You in September, Calo Redo, and the last one is Paint Ralphie Red. So that right now you can go to our Twitter page for the next 3 days and through the end of the week and vote on that. And whatever the highest vote getter is, that will be the official hashtag that we use for basically the remainder of this offseason. Because we're going to make that place red.
So Honky, why don't you pull that back up again?
Mm-hmm.
I just want to quiz you guys a little bit. What does the name Colorado mean in Spanish?
Oh yeah, it's colored red or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. There you go.
Yeah, we had somebody responded with a real long thing about that, and then Johnny on Twitter responded. He goes, "That's too long of a hashtag." This guy's response was like a paragraph of the history of what Colorado means. This was interesting though, is that this one guy, and I'm trying to read it here, CU Buff Stats or whatever. He goes, for those of you wondering about Huskers buying season tickets, it's been confirmed deposits are non-refundable and priority will be given to those with Colorado billing addresses, blah, blah, blah. All I know is I responded, I go, newsflash, there's apparently no Nebraska fans with Colorado billing addresses. P.S. Half the Redcast have Colorado billing addresses. So even I don't buy that to begin with, but even if that was the case, there's going to be plenty of people that can find a way to get their hands on a Colorado mailing address.
We're going to find out.
Well, and not only that, but I got a phone call from them asking if I wanted to put down a deposit for season tickets. I did for one.
Rob, you might not want to make this public. You might lose, this
I won't lose anything because I've paid them in the past for tickets. So it's not even that big of a deal. And the guy even told me that they're not limiting it to Colorado addresses because right now I think that same Colorado Stats guy or whatever he's called, who cares, he said, they've raised $500,000 in season ticket deposits. Well, a little bit of math will tell you that's 3,300 season ticket packages that they have secured deposits on in a 50,000 seat stadium. So I'm guessing there's going to be tickets available and season ticket packages available to plenty more people out there.
Yeah, I just like the challenge of it. I just like the challenge. Their AD, calls us out on the Prime's welcoming press conference.
Never a good idea.
Never a good idea. The number one thing with Husker Nation, don't challenge Husker Nation. Moving on. Let's talk a little bit transfer portal here, Dave. And this is from Max Olson. And this was a week ago, so the numbers are well beyond this at this point. This was from December 9th. But he goes, we will soon surpass 1,000 FBS scholarship players in the transfer portal, the breakdown of active players by position, and it goes position by position there. I haven't even seen what the most recent number is, but again, well surpassing that, and it's everywhere. It's so a school like Nebraska going through a transition. Yeah, we're going to have some guys in there, no doubt, but everyone does, and this is the same thing we would have said last offseason, right? I mean, just it's a part of the game now.
Yeah. You just do the math on that, and there's only 130 FBS programs, and a typical incoming class is 20 student athletes or so. If you're going to have 1,000 guys in the transfer portal, you're just not going to have that many spots. It's just not going to happen, right? So I think there's a lot of risk. And some clearly benefit from this. The quarterbacks in particular. When they can prove out their value and there's a NIL opportunity out there, it's almost motivation to transfer unnecessarily. But once you start ticking down that list, at some point it becomes pretty negative on the results standpoint. Yeah.
Well, Boomer, can you show that one that quote again there from Kurt Payne? I saw some stats that 47% of transfers don't end up at the FBS level, and whether how true that exact stat is, it's probably not far off, and it does show that there are winners and losers in all this too. We've seen enough cases now. There's enough years of the portal where you've seen the guys that made the transfer and they don't end up at another FBS school or a Power 5 school.
Yeah, they move down. That even really tells the full story, right? You could read that and say, wow, it's a real negative. There could be, out of that 47%, half of those or 20-some% of the people that transfer, maybe they go down to FCS and actually still get a scholarship and they actually play a lot and they, have a good academic opportunity and they get to play football and they move on, right?
Playing an actual playoff, so things like that. Yeah.
But I mean, that also means there's also maybe 10, 20, 30% that might even drop further from that list or don't even get picked up at all, right? I mean, I don't know if anybody's taking a deeper dive on all those numbers, but there's a lot of story there.
Yeah, you can always have the McCaffreys too, who transfer because they don't want to play wide receiver just so they can go to another school and play wide receiver. I mean, that's it.
I mean, Luke was the leading wide receiver at Rice. I don't know. Could he transfer again? Could he come back?
I'm sure he could. Yeah. NCAA nowadays, Dave, you get like 10 years to play. So
yeah, I mean, I think he has a graduate transfer in him at least, right?
Well, who's the
Warner come back? I don't know.
The quarterback, JT Daniels, that started at Georgia, or did he start at UCLA?
No, he started at USC.
USC, goes to Georgia.
Played at USC, started for him.
Jeez, goes to Georgia, goes to West Virginia, and now he has a 7th year that is potential, or he's going to transfer again with the 7th year. And I mean, the COVID stuff just kind of gets things all screwy. When I was at Alumni Hall over the weekend, and I had a chance to talk with Kevin Williams, who was on the Redcast back in February, he had just submitted papers to the NCAA, and he hopes to know by like Christmas time on if he will get a 6th year, essentially. I think it is. So he's petitioning for, or no, I think it is. I think he said it was a 7th year. So he's petitioning for that.
To be clear, so it's a medical red shirt he's going after. Is that right?
I'm guessing at that point it must be when you start going into that.
It would be his second medical red shirt.
You can get a second medical red shirt?
It would be his second medical because he's had a medical red shirt at UNC, as well as I believe he redshirted his freshman year.
Well, how many games did he play this year, though?
I'd like actually get into. I think it was less than 4. I know that the one game where he got injured,
that would be
he was starting. The one game that he got injured, he started and he pancaked a couple guys, and then all of a sudden he was off the field. So I don't know.
I'm rooting for that because that.
Yeah, I am too. I'm not quite sure. I would love to have him back, Kevin. If you're listening, love to have you back on the show and kind of talk about it a little bit more.
Maybe we'll talk a little about the O-line here coming up. But I mean, I just don't know if what scenario that is. But there's a lot of opportunities to play a lot of football, and I mean, there's a lot of quarterbacks. JT Daniels, I don't blame the guy, right? I mean, if your NFL prospects aren't high and you can transfer again and make another 6 figures somewhere, I would probably do it, right?
Yeah, that's the thing right now. I mean, the money. I mean, we've heard stats, and we know what some of these guys have made. I mean, it's substantial enough for the high end guys. It's substantial enough that at least makes you pause for a second if you want to come back for one more year. I mean, it's one thing, to come back and just get your education, but if you can come back, get your education, get another couple 6 figures, that's not the worst thing in the world there. So.
Honky, were you making 6 figures when you were 24?
Well, not legally, but
why are you always stealing my life, Honky?
Yeah, I know. Next up on tweets, this one here, I want to get your guys' feedback on this because I thought this was that somebody responded to one of our posts and they were kind of crapping on a couple of in-state kids. That one guy is a recruit and one guy's a current Husker that is in the portal that's from in-state. And basically the argument was that, I'm just tired of these in-state kids. If you don't have that kind of, loyalty, blah, 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 then good riddance. And I just quote tweeted the guy, and then he eventually, I think he quit Twitter, but I just wanted him to delete the tweet. But anyways, he goes, honestly tired of this argument. Nebraska kid looks elsewhere, so forget him. A major transition went on inside the program that these young men had zero control over, have no issue with any player taking a step back to evaluate the situation, like Jamari Butler did and came back, GBR. The idea that, that some in-state kid has to show more loyalty than anyone else when there's all this transition going on. I mean, some cases, you don't even know who your position coach is and everything. I have no issue with a kid going into the portal or decommitting to take a step back to look at what's out there. And hopefully, if all is well, the example of Jamari Butler was great this last week. He went into the portal. He looked around. He got the feedback he wanted. He probably met with the new DC who just got hired, and now he's a Husker again. So the portal doesn't mean you're gone, and decommitting doesn't mean that you won't come back. But I don't love Husker fans going out there and on Twitter saying, hey, good riddance, and we didn't want you in this and this and this either.
It's looking like Coleman might come back too. Apparently On3 is giving like 100%, confidence or whatever that Malachi Coleman's going to recommit to Nebraska and after this weekend. And
Malachi, I believe.
Malachi, I'm sorry, Malachi.
Sure, we get Malachi's first name.
You know what, man?
It's an awesome first name, personally.
It's Beatrice, not Beatrice, and it's Colonel.
Yeah, it's all right. Yeah. Rob, it's a good point. Point well taken. That's another example of an actual high school student who had decommitted, and is now reconsidering. And to Honky's point, you're going to have a coaching change here and a transition opportunity to make sure that you're making the best decision and understand what that new coaching staff has to offer. A little bit different than obviously someone who's already been in the program. But it's something that's happening. And I think we're going to see more of that here over the next couple of weeks. So.
And before any Redcast fans jump all over me for getting the name wrong, I barely remember my own kids' names. Okay, so let's just be clear on that.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's right, Bob.
It's never Bob. Yeah. My friend David. We went out one time. David and I went out, and he lost his ID, so I've just been calling him Dave ever since.
I call myself David all the time, Rob. It's fine. I should prefer that.
I was trying to tell a dad joke.
Yeah.
Didn't work. All right, what's up, on? What's our
next up? Next up, this was from Sidelines Clemson ACC Champs on Twitter. Deion Sanders stood in front of 40 kids and told them to leave because they weren't good enough for him. He then pulled scholarships of kids committed to the school because they weren't good enough. He then offered the most money possible to every 4 or 5 star on the list. Not rooting for that. There's a lot in there. Dave, I think you have a point you want to get to here.
Yeah, well, actually, anybody can answer this question of mine. Maybe Boomer's already watched the entire, I think, is there a 15-minute video that I've heard that there's a lot more to that speech than that 30-second soundbite that hit Twitter, right? Because, I think and there's a lot more to saying, like, hey, you're going to be here to compete and all that type of stuff. Do you feel like maybe the media kind of twisted that soundbite a little bit?
Yeah, I think it's definitely that segment did come across pretty harsh if you just listen to that segment. I think, like you said, Dave. And in fairness, when you're head coach, that's the kind of stuff that's going to happen. People are going to look for sound bites. We're a sound bite culture, and with social media, that's what you're going to get. People aren't going to sit down and listen to a 15-minute, speech for the most part, unless you're crazy like most of us, that are listening to the show right now. But and that's part of what I think Sanders is going to be. He's going to be that guy that
you're going to throw it out there,
clicks, and going to be, people want to get little bits and pieces, throw it out on social media, and for good or ill, that's what Colorado's going to be for the next couple of years. Is that kind of Deion Sanders show? So,
I don't think Deion hates the fact that only his sound bites got out there. That Deion's he's a promoter and So, but to your point that there was more to it than just the 5-second or the 10-second video of him going in there and basically saying, I want all of you guys gone, which is how it came across. Now, I'll admittedly I haven't watched much more than that. What else did he kind of go on to say? I guess for the.
I have not watched all 15 minutes either, but I've watched a little bit more. And if you put it in context, it's more about competition. Say, hey, I'm bringing guys in here, but if you want to compete, you can be here. But if not, get the heck out of here, right? It's one of those like challenge type statements, right? Opposed to like none of you guys are good enough and get the heck out. It was more of a challenge to rise to the occasion, right? That we are going to bring guys in. And if you can compete, you'll be fine, right? I'm paraphrasing obviously here, but I think the soundbite was like, none of you guys are here. Everybody transfer out. I want 0 people on scholarship, and I want to start fresh, right? Which in some ways, people have, if you listen to folks that have seen what Matt Rule has done at Temple and Baylor, he kind of took a similar approach, a fire sale approach of like, let's knock the whole house down. I am tearing it down to the foundation. I'm going to build it back up. Right. And I think, soundbite wise, I think you're exactly right, Honky. I think Deion was completely fine in how it came out because it's going to shock and awe folks. But when anybody's shock and awed, he wants to get into that little crack in the door and say like, hey, but what I'm really saying is let's compete and be the best we can possibly be. And if you're good enough to be on my team, I'll take you, right? And
yeah, and it should be noted with Matt Rule, for completely different circumstances at both Temple and Baylor, that approach of tearing it down and building it back up didn't lead to a lot of wins in year one. So
nope, sure doesn't.
That approach is going to be problematic at Nebraska if you went 2-10 in year one. That the Husker fans aren't looking for that.
It could happen.
And I don't know at Colorado what their fans would be like with the 2-10 first season either. You know, I mean, so you've got it.
Well, that would technically double their wins from this year. So actually,
But Coach Rule even talked about that in one of the many interviews I've listened to him so far, where he mentioned that this is a rebuild and you got to build it the right way. But he also said you've got to win games along the way. That look, that's just stating the obvious. It would be a real hard sell, no matter how much you want to sell development and being a developmental program. It's a real hard sell if that comes along with a record anywhere near what his first year record was at those two predecessor schools.
Boomer, I mean, I think it's a valid question here. Is with an 8-year contract worth $74 million, which 90% is guaranteed, would someone like Rule risk the public relations disaster that a 1-11 or 2-10 season results in, if as long as he's staying true to his process and he believes that process is going to deliver double-digit victories in year 3, almost guaranteed? Does he just like live with the PR disaster of going 2-10 in year 1? He just doesn't care about the wins and losses. If they win, great. If they lose, great. I don't care. But I believe in my process. I'm committed to this. I don't care.
Well, he kind of comes across that way. I know, like Honky said, he mentioned you have to win games on the way, but he's talked enough about it being a process that I don't think he himself worries too much about what the first season is going to be. And he's, in some ways, he almost kind of seems to be recruiting.
We're not firing him.
Yeah, we're not firing him in 1 year. I mean, he doesn't really seem to necessarily be at this point recruiting for that right away. I mean, we don't have a quarterbacks coach yet. He's kind of taking his time assembling the staff that he wants. I think a lot of our players aren't entirely sure where we're headed yet. I mean, it surprised me that nobody's left the coaching or the quarterback room yet. I mean, that nobody's transferred out.
Yeah, sure.
They probably don't know what they're doing yet. So I think this first year, if we win, Rule would be pleased with it, but I don't think he himself doesn't depend on, going out and winning 9 games or something this next year. Now, how the fan base take it,
can he take the fire is the question, right?
Yeah, 1 or 2 win season means, you might be losing to Northern Illinois and La Tech somewhere on the way, and that could be kind of rough, but. And again, some of it also kind of goes with, how the team looks in these games. If you're getting blown out constantly, it's one thing.
Hey, Boomer,
competitive, that's another. Yeah.
Do me a favor when Honky's dying to jump in here. Could you look up Baylor's year 1 and see who he actually lost? To go 1-11 in the Big 12 means he lost 2 non-conference games. I'd be curious what those were. To your point, Honky, I think that 1-11 is an extreme here.
All right, got it right in front of me when you're ready, Dave. Yep.
1 second. It's just that, I think we do play La Tech in Northern Illinois, and look, we can lose to anyone, but just from a X's and O's and bodies, we should win 2 of our 3 non-conference, and Colorado is likely should be a win too. You could argue we could win Northwestern with, again how they've been playing. So that's 3 or 4 wins that are on there, but if you go 1-11, what does that actually look like? Boomer, what did Baylor do in?
Let's see. The first year with Matt Ruler in 2017, 1-11, they opened the season with losses to the Turner Gill Liberty Flames, the UTSA Roadrunners, and then the Duke Blue Devils in non-con, and all relatively close losses. All 3 of those teams were above 500 by the end of the year, so it wasn't like they were complete crap, but.
Okay.
Yeah, so
all right.
Opened pretty tough. Then played number 3 Oklahoma fairly close, and kind of struggled the rest of the year. Almost beat West Virginia, lost by 2, and Did beat Kansas by the end of the year, so there's that, I guess.
Well, and as I mentioned at the beginning, talking about those other two schools he was at with completely different circumstances. I mean, the circumstances at Baylor, where he basically got down to where he had about 45 guys on scholarship at one point during that first offseason. This is a different world too now. This isn't 2017. So as we started to see, and we'll get into a little bit of the recruiting stuff, some of the guys they're starting to bring in now with the transfer portal, you have the opportunity to transition your team faster than what he would have had back in 2017. So to bring in a Ben Scott, an offensive lineman this last weekend they brought in from Arizona State, who has over 2 seasons of starting at Arizona State as a guard and or as a center, and I think maybe a tackle. But anyways, that's a guy that if you can get him to flip here, that's an immediate player right away in year one that could be get him
20-some starts at Arizona State. I mean, a legit P5 starter, and
get him here in January, not in May. Yep. Get him here in January and through the process. Yep. That's how you can flip a roster faster than what you could do in the past. At the same token, we're going to lose some guys to the portal too. I mean, so that's just the portal swings both ways, and that's why we always kind of say don't freak out too much when one player leaves because we're usually going to get someone else.
Yeah, Rob.
Well, so there are also two unique circumstances, I guess. Boomer, I don't know. Did you mention this? So you can stop me. But the year that he took over Temple too was their first year in the American Football Conference. So it was like a new conference, new coach, new team, probably having to build their team differently for an entirely different league that involved teams like Cincinnati, Houston, Louisville, UCF, right? Like, so you're coming into a new league already as it is, which doesn't really always guarantee that you're going to start winning games immediately. You're also a brand new coach your first year. So, and then Baylor, obviously, as Honky just mentioned. So, it's a little bit hard for me to also judge those first years at those schools, because they are unique situations, much like ours, right? But we're also a team that is in a conference that we've been in for a while, and we kind of know what we're up against.
Yeah, I get it, Rob. I totally agree.
Well, can you call that Kool-Aid? I don't know, but
Well, it's not even Kool-Aid. I just think I think your point here to me is that it's just so. It's a nice glass, Rob. I like Rob's actually showing off a Kool-Aid glass. I don't think there's Kool-Aid in there, but
no, that's weird.
But your point, Rob. I mean, you're right. Every situation is different, and a lot of people just simply point to Temple and Baylor only won one game in their first year. Obviously, we're only going to win one game in our first year, and that's probably a bit of an exaggeration. But I think it's fair to say also that I think Rule is committed to doing this the way he wants to do it, and the wins and losses are somewhat secondary to the process of building a program. That's what he wanted, a program builder. And so he's going to tear some things down to get there. And that sometimes your growth might be stunted a little bit because of that. And that could be frustrating.
Well, how much more stunted can it be, though?
Well, that's part of it right now is the expectations. There's no better time to come into Nebraska and try to build a program and tear things down a little bit because, we want to go to my expectation for next season is a bowl game. That's what I want to see. I want to see 6 and 6. Awesome. And I think that's a great expectation for him in year one. Now, Dave, where you and I would butt heads last offseason, and by the way, I would have loved your expectation. You just wanted to get to a bowl game with Frost there in year 5. You just wanted 6 and 6. And I was like, I just couldn't do it. I couldn't say year 5 of Frost to go 6 and 6. I just couldn't do it. But I can do it in year 1 of Rule. So, this isn't an all or nothing thing. If we don't go 6 and 6, firing coach. I'm not saying anything like that. I'm just saying my expectation right now is get to 6 wins. And whether that takes 6 weeks to do or if it takes 12 weeks to do, get to 6 wins next year. I think that would be an amazing start. And that's a really good expectation for a coach to be coming into versus coming into – we've had 2 coaches in the past fired with 9-win records, and that's a lot harder for some guy to come into because Riley and Callahan, when they were coming in, they were trying to flip cultures and bring their guys in and do all that, but they were doing it with, hey, last year's team went 9-4, 10-3, and made bowl games, and that's the expectation for you to do right away. So,
yep, that's right.
Yeah, that's gonna be my Kool-Aid phrase. Yeah, my Kool-Aid phrase for the year is we're going bowling. Like that's my Kool-Aid phrase. I think I've tempered my expectations to Dave level expectations. At year one of rule. I'll reserve year 3 for national championships. Okay.
I mean, look, expectations are a funny thing because they change all the time. They change from week to week. If you start winning a couple games, I mean, we'll talk about basketball in a few minutes. You beat Creighton, and all of a sudden the expectations get up there where it's like, well, maybe you should be competing with somebody. Now we just lost in overtime to Purdue, who's number 1 in the country. My expectations start to change now when we're going to play Iowa and Wisconsin, these other teams in the Big Ten. Because
you lost by 1 score on a terrible call.
Well, I don't even want to get into that. I don't even want to get into that part yet. It's simply the expectations start to change when the team shows something. So if we go out there and we beat a team early in the season that you're not expecting, all of a sudden that the talk of just going 6-6 isn't, doesn't stay true anymore. If you're showing that you're actually, we beat Minnesota on the road, and then you go out and you beat Colorado on the road. Oh my God, you're 2-0, 2 road wins. And you're like, okay, hey, guess what? Expectations are changing, but that's a lot of winning that has to happen first. So,
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I mean, it's really hard to read next year, right? Because just purely from a talent perspective, we're not a 1-11 team. There's no way we should only win a game,
sure,
right? But I mean, to Rule's point about the whole process is that maybe you win less in year 1 because of that process. But we're going to find out. That's what we're going to do.
Yeah, well, I don't expect them to take any shortcuts, but from a recruiting standpoint, they are absolutely going out there. And here we have this slide up here. I've got a few more guys to add to it, but this is a little bit of roster management. I can't even begin to tell you all the guys that have left over the course of the last 2-3 weeks since we've talked about it last. Yeah. But we've had a number of guys out. Now we brought in long snapper Marco Ortiz. He's a grad transfer from Florida for the new staff, and he's a long snapper. He's on scholarship. He's joining Quentin Ives, a prep running back wide receiver from New Jersey. So there's the Quentin Ives. We had Arizona State offensive lineman Ben Scott in Lincoln this weekend, played in 28 games for the Sun Devils at both center and right tackle. He has not committed as far as we know yet, but he was here. Also, Jalen Lloyd from Omaha West Side, joined him on, here's his tweet, join me on December 17th at 1 p.m. at the Boys and Girls Club in Omaha, and I plan to find out where I plan to spend the next 4 years. So he's down to Florida, Georgia, Illinois, Texas Tech, and Nebraska. In addition to that, they just announced today cornerback Sincere Sifuala, 6'2", 180 pounds from IMG Academy. He's here. And then JUCO D-end edge Kai Wallen, 6'6", 235. He is committed, and there's rumors abound of other commits or guys that are ready to commit here. Rob mentioned Malachi, or however you said his name, Rob. And and so hopefully, I
said Malachi, and I'm not proud of it. Okay.
Yeah. No, we're not. None of us are proud of that. But you also said Jerry Tag one time when we were talking about tagging.
That's true, Jerry Tag. That's right. That's one of the.
That's so what happens when
let's not make fun of Rob. Let's put Rob.
You know what they say? People who mispronounce names and words are people who read, because that's the way that my brain sees it. So I'm not repeating it off of. The only time I ever see Malachi's name is like on Twitter. So that's the way my brain is processing it, because I read.
Redcasters, Rob is literate. That's what you need to know, that he is not illiterate. He can read. Can you bring up like that
stuff or?
Do you want that? Do you want this up here?
Yeah, that's great. I think this is a really interesting list here. So, transition classes are always tough, right? And I think the transfer portal is also going to be an interesting component of all of this. But I don't know what to think about long snappers. He's a grad transfer. We get 1 year with this guy, Marco Ortiz. I hope he's the greatest long snapper of all time. I typically think that we can find somebody from central Nebraska to be our long snapper, and he does just fine. So I don't understand why we need to do a scholarship, but that's fine. The running back from New Jersey, right? I mean, it's cool that we're back in New Jersey. He's also doesn't have a lot of FBS offers, but I think he may have a lot of potential, and this staff likes to think about development. So, I mean, if they see something special in this guy, I know that EJ, the Bucktel, how do you say his last name? The running backs.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm the only one allowed.
Malachi, I think, Dave. That's how you
I
pronounce it.
I couldn't even remember the name, Rob.
And
so it wasn't a mispronunciation. I just didn't know it. Like the guy. And so, but that's the type of player that might end up being our starting running back, but it's probably not going to be till he's like a junior, right? I mean, it's going to take a little bit of development on that. The very first commit of the rule class was a track star from Texas, right? He's not highly recruited as a football player, has 4.2 speed, and maybe could be a dangerous downfield weapon in the future, right? I mean, I think Ben Scott.
Same with Jalen Lloyd here from Omaha.
Jalen Lloyd's a track star, absolutely, and I mean that's a great list, but I mean a lot of those are track offers, right?
Yep.
But I mean if
the
you
Oakland Raider model,
track, right? It's just different, right? And it's not like we're going after the absolute elite 4-star, 5-star player. Ben Scott, though, is a transfer who could be immediate playing time and has proven himself at the Power 5 level. Just a really very diverse right now a class that's being formed. And, you know, I mean, you have a half of a recruiting staff right now. They're evaluating and offering as they go. And I mean, that's what we're going to see for the next couple of weeks, I think.
But something I did see something I saw on Ben Scott, his mom is from Columbus. And I guess he has ties to Columbus and has, grew up a Husker fan. So it could be one of those things where we have a chance to get somebody back here. And but Rob, you were going to say something?
Well, I was going to ask too, Dave, and this is actually a question because I haven't looked into this too much. And, you know, the process that Trev used to hire Rule, a lot of analytics were used, right? And thanks to, you know, our good friend Abby of the Redcast, like, you know, she has verified that there were a lot of things that were used to hire, you know, the coaches, the assistants, you know, all the way up to Matt Rule. So it's like, that's where we came up with, like, you know, Satterfield is our offensive coordinator. And then they brought in, you know, so there's like a lot of things going into this. How much of those analytics do you think are being used to look at some of these players? Like, is this, you know, especially guys that are coming out of the transfer portal, like, are they looking at some of these players and maybe not just their in-game stats, but maybe how those stats were effective in certain situations? And this is a question I'm posing. I'm just wondering, like, how much of that is being used. I mean, you're laughing. I don't know why you're laughing, but
I think the matrix analytical thing, which, I mean, we know these guys, so I mean, I look forward to actually having a conversation with them at some point. I think that was heavily used for the Rule hire.
Yeah,
I think beyond that, I don't believe that the assistant coaches are using that same. They're not using the same data points. Matt Rule is making those hires with his judgment purely, almost. That'd be my take, because I mean, there's no. I mean, they're all his guys. You can find outside of Tony White at this point, you can draw connective tissue. And actually, Tony White there's a little bit of connective tissue there with the UCLA thing. I mean, it's not math. I mean, it's relationships, right? I mean, that's how Matt Rule is hiring people. We can talk about that more, because I think it's really interesting to think about this coaching staff. And
I've heard differently, and that's why I'm asking. Is I have heard.
I don't see it. If you can tell me how that's.
I mean, maybe he has a list of people, and then he's like going through the analytics.
He knows everybody on the list, though. Is the key.
It's true. I don't disagree, but
so I mean, the list is curated by him saying these are the guys that I know, that I trust, and then if there's analytics that are telling him that this guy's better suited for Nebraska than this guy, that's fine. But the universe is being created by Matt Rule. There, he's not allowing outside forces to tell him you should hire this guy because of this data point. I mean, it's not happening. Sure. But I have no idea about the players, though. I'd like to think that we're always using data to some degree to choose players, but I don't know.
Yeah, and when you have these transition classes, some of these guys are going to be players that you've recruited in the past, maybe a player that you're bringing with you from another school. I mean, this is an interesting staff. This is not the same as Frost bringing his entire staff over from UCF. This is Rule bringing a lot of buddies, but these buddies come from a lot of different schools and places now. Yeah,
and to your point there, Honky, on that one, because Rule's coming from the NFL, there's a few examples, like the running backs coach brings someone along that he had recruited on the East Coast. But like and what's Bryce's last name? I want to say Turner, but I don't think it is, from Texas. The very first.
I think you're right. That the guy that
it's almost like Jamal Turner, who's also from Texas and was super fast, but Bryce Turner, like a 2-star football recruit, but probably a 5-star track recruit, right? I mean, he's considered to be a legit track guy, and typically those to Rob, your point of the Raiders, idea of speed first, right? I mean, Rule has a template where he will take players that maybe not legit and NCAA, FBS, Division I type recruits, that they think after 2 or 3 years they can turn into very great players because they have the numbers, right? The dash time, the whatever they're looking at, saying that we can turn that guy into a really good player here. Will that actually work in the Big Ten opposed to the Big 12 or at Temple? We're going to find out. That's exactly what we're going to find out.
With I mean, now it didn't translate always to wins, but like Thompson to Palmer, right? Like Palmer had that speed, that breakaway speed that could get open. If in fact Thompson does come back this year, and he's got 2 wide receivers that are Trey Palmers that are able to like split the field and open up the defense and everything. That's a whole different.
What I would say though, to Dave's point, Palmer was not a developmental guy. He was here now.
You're right.
Get here for an entire offseason. They got him here in January, which is what I want with any of our transfer guys. We got a full offseason with them. I mean, think of what Palmer's season would have been like if he had got here in June or July. There's a good chance it's not as good. Just natural acclimation and transition. So even a guy that's not a developmental guy still can benefit from being here. But he kind of had the benefit of all that. That's not what we're talking about here with some of these guys that we're taking right now that are 2 to 3 year development dudes.
Play for 3 years.
Yep. And that's the thing about being patient. Can we be good enough without him playing and players like him playing? Can we be good enough to get to those 6 wins and up? My goal is 6 wins, whether it takes 6 weeks or 12 weeks, get to 6, and we'll readjust. We'll reevaluate after. If it takes 6 weeks to get to 6, awesome. But let's just get to 6. Let's get to a bowl game at the very minimum next year. That's me pumping any brakes on any Kool-Aid there. It's what I want to see.
Trey Palmer had great speed, but he was also a 5-star football recruit, right? I mean, he legitimately, and I mean, he's a good route runner, and hands weren't perfect, but good enough, and he's probably going to play in the NFL. I got a good feeling that I love
these. Right? I love these lines that Boomer has going across the bottom here. I mean, just bowl year 1 by week 6 or start the new coaching search. Redcast Honky. Paraphrasing. Thank you for stating that. Well, this is the last tweet of the week here. Matrix Analytical, who, as Dave said, we had them on. We had Dave Bartu and Professor of College Football, Adam McClintock, over the summer. And I've been talking with Adam, and we'll have him on here in the off season. It's still kind of crazy time for them right now because they're still coaching carousel stuff going on. But anyways, this tweet here, the 2 biggest openings in 2022 added Matrix Analytical to their due diligence. It's not if, but when is your program going to take advantage of every edge? Staffing and coach search data available for every FBS coach, chief of staff, and AD. Fall behind, get left behind. So, I mean, there's the official thing. We thought that Trev had used. We knew he had used an analytical company. We didn't know if it was exactly Matrix Analytical, but we now do. So that was cool. And the fact that we had a chance to talk with those guys over the summer was pretty cool. That's the tweets of the week.
An hour into the show.
It's only 49 minutes, Rob. We got plenty of time left. I mean, do we need to transition, or we just keep on talking about football?
I mean, yeah.
I listened to Matt's Rule was a great show. I mean, did anybody else listen to Matt's Rule last week?
Well, I had to. I was running the production side of it. So no, but we did have
this Matt guy. This Matt guy is really good, huh? You should get him back on the show.
Yeah. He really is.
He costs too much.
Yeah.
Well,
the emotional toll it takes on all of us is a little bit much.
the NIL deal. We just got to sweeten the package for him. I'm thinking. I don't know.
Trust me. Every time I come out to Nebraska, I try.
Yeah, you do.
Well, I mean, football-wise, Boomer, I mean, there's been some good comments, so maybe you could bring up a few. I mean, we could talk a little bit about the D coordinator, Tony White, and what he's going to actually deploy here. I think that's a worthwhile conversation.
I actually have a couple thoughts on that too. So, yeah, let's talk about that.
Good. All right, so here's Kurt Payne asking, what are the odds we run a 4-3 defense, even though we hired a D coordinator that is not running that currently? I'll start with Honky on that one. I mean, so the understanding, so Tony White, I mean, like, I missed last week's show, guys. I actually had to work on my day job at night. But a lot of coaching hires here. It's really interesting. I don't know exactly what to make of it. I think Tony White is a little bit more outside the box than some of the earlier hires. And I think at some level, I really like it. I think he's young, but with experience. I like the fact that he's coached several locations, including Power 5, and has the lineage with Rahi Long to say, like, hey, this guy has learned a certain system and he wants to do it. And that system has been proven time and time again over decades of college football. But at the same time, when you tell me we're hiring a 3-3-5 guy, Honky, I'm like, oh no, are you kidding me? A 3-3, what a 3-3-5? We need to stop the run in the Big Ten. What are we doing with 5 people in the secondary? What do you think, Mark?
Well, when they beat Purdue, so the one like opponent that Syracuse and Nebraska played, they held Purdue to 61 rushing yards. Now they gave up 424 passing yards to Purdue. So with that 5 guys in the backfield, they had about as much trouble stopping them in the pass as we did. But at least from a run defensive standpoint, they had a better fare against the Boilermakers than we did. I've read of some things. There was one recruit that talked about how he had already talked with Coach White, about the defense, and that there was going to be multiple fronts. Now, shoot me if that's the first time we've heard that. That was all last offseason, the same thing. But multiple fronts. And the other thing is, when you think of what the 3-3-5 is, really that's kind of what we ran in 2021 with JoJo. I mean, that's really what that was. Yeah. And so I wouldn't get too in this is a little hypocritical coming from me, because I've specifically said I want to see a 4-3. That's my own personal preference. I love the 4-3, but also,
yeah, I know you
let's not get overworked up right now about specific alignment, because you can make any of these things work, and he has demonstrated success at a P5 level running what they run.
So, Honky, I mean, like, I know you're just like, hey, I don't want to wax poetic about the 4-3, but like in a succinct manner, what do you like about the 4-3? I guess that the 3-3-5 may not deliver.
The 3-4 in general, and there's 3-3-5. It's supposed to be more. You have more options. You can bring this guy and bring that guy, and 4-3 is a lot more straight ahead, right at you. I mean, your 2 defensive ends in a true 4-3. We think of Trev Alberts as the perfect example. He was a stand-up outside linebacker up until his 4th year. And when he became a D end, his senior year, and had 15 sacks, he wasn't dropping back into coverage. You had 2 D ends that were 230 to 250 pounds, roughly in that area. They're rush ends. You have 2 big old D tackles in the middle instead of 3. You have 2 of them in the middle, and those guys they have to take up double teams. That's their job. You do that, now you've got 3 linebackers back there that can, if you're taking up double teams with your 2 tackles, linebackers can get off, clean. Schematically, I just like it. I've seen it work so well. Now, at the same token that I say that, I also think recruiting wise, what it takes to recruit to the 3-4, to get the type of lineman that you need in the 3-4, it seems like
exactly
we have better options out here in this area of the country. We tend to do better getting 4-3 guys. And I mean, Kevin Raymakers, the Terry Keneally's, I can go down the whole Warren Kaiser, all those kinds of guys, they can fit into a 4-3 a little better. But when you try to take Ben Stilley, who's, comes there as an outside linebacker, let's throw 50 pounds on him so that we can get him to 290 pounds to play a 3-4 D end. I think that's harder to do. Now, not all 3-3-5s and 3-4s are the same. So I don't know if Coach White's 3-4 is going to be the same as what Shenander's was, which wasn't the same as what Diaco's was either. So there's a lot of things here. I'm taking a lot of liberties acting like I know exactly how this is going to run. I don't, but I'm just a preference thing. And I'm trying not to be hypocritical. Preference thing. I like the 4-3.
Yeah, I know that's fair. That's what I wanted to hear from you. I appreciate the honesty there, honestly, because I mean that's what we need to talk about, right? I mean, like just to go ahead and just like, oh, the 3-3-5 is going to be great, like no, let's like have a real dialogue here about like what we could like or not like about it, right? And I was listening to I can't remember which of the 1620 shows today, and they had this expert on defenses, and he was breaking down the 3-3-5. Iowa State apparently has played this. Obviously, Baylor under Rule was a 3-3-5. Tony White has not coached directly under Rule, runs a 3-3-5. But the key with any of those, and same thing we heard when we heard about 3-4 under Chins and others, is that the guy in the middle is the key, right? And that's hard to get that one guy at the nose who can take on essentially two offensive linemen and stuff that, right? And that's a little bit different. Boomer, Rob, I mean, in your mind right now, who would that guy be on our current roster who could be the run stuffing nose tackle in a three-man defensive front? Rob?
I mean, ideally it would be Nash, right? Like you would think that he would get the physicality and he's already got the size. He's already got the will to win, I would hope. It seems like he struggled a little bit in that position, to the last couple seasons, but a lot of things that we're hearing too is that this new strength coach is going to be working a lot on flexibility and strength in those areas, which is a lot different.
Lower that center of gravity.
And one of the things too, and it's funny because I know Honky loves the 4-3, but he's also the one that kind of got me on board with this 3-3-5 because he shared with us that video of that guy who broke down White's 3-3-5 defense at Syracuse, right? And the guy broke it down. And one of the things too, and Redcasters, you're listening, please note this. He only ran a 3-3-5 40% of the time. 60% of the time he's running a lot of other defenses. And the nice thing about the 3-3-5, and I'm noticing a lot in some NFL defenses as well, watching a lot of games, is that what it allows to do, like for example, and I swear to God, Dave, I'm not trying to bring the Raiders into this or anything, but one thing I noticed this weekend is that when their defense was going well, they were actually playing a 3-3-5, and they were using Max Crosby and what's his name, the big guy that they just signed, and now all of a sudden his name escapes me because of course
we'll call him Bob.
What's that? Yeah, we'll call him Bob. But they were using him and Chandler Jones. They were using them on the outside, and the guy on the TV actually said, "Yeah, this is actually they took their 3-3-5 off and they put these two defensive ends and made them hybrids and put them on the outside. So they had 5 guys lined up, but they had 2 DNs basically lined up far on the outside with almost nobody to cover. So by the time that they were bull rushing, whichever offensive lineman was unfortunate enough to have to cover them, they were already going to have the leverage at that point, right? Because they're 2 very athletic outside defensive end type of guys that weren't lining up right up against an offensive lineman to start. And so it gives the 3-3-5 gives you the flexibility to go maybe like a 5-2-4 or a 5-3, whatever, like you could basically just throw around a lot of different packages. You can disguise a lot of blitzes. There's a lot of things that you can do in that defense. I think that I think it's going to be
hybrid exciting defense. Is that fair to say?
I think
Honky, and then I'm going to throw something to Boomer. Honk, go for it.
Yeah, I think at the core of all this is what Trev identified in the coaching search, is that we need to win the trenches. And if you can win the trenches, whether you're in a 3-man front or a 4-man front, I guess alignment doesn't necessarily matter as much if we're winning the trenches. Now, part of winning the trenches might be some of the strength changes. I had opportunity to talk to some of the linemen at the Pipeline event at Alumni Hall this weekend. And we just talked about that a little bit. Talked about the new strength coach. And Kevin Williams, said, yeah, man, they're doing it's a lot less weight.
Corey Campbell, is that right?
Corey Campbell, yes. Yes, Corey Campbell. Doing a lot less weight right now. More reps, lot less weight. Of course, they're hitting muscles that they haven't hit before. We've heard that before, right? But I mentioned like with Duvall, was it that you guys weren't as flexible and everything? And I mean, he came to the defense of Duvall in the sense that he goes, "Oh man, we were strong. Duvall got us strong. There was no concerns about us not having strength."
Think there's a good base there. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I mean, it wasn't like him. He wasn't sitting there crapping on the old coach. He was like, "No, he got us strong." But this new coach, you can tell there's going to be a lot more emphasis on that mobility and flexibility and all of that comes along with it. So to Rob's point and to your point, Dave, if you're going to run a 3-4, if it's going to be successful, you need to have dominant nose tackle play. I mean, when we saw it at its best is when we had Damian Daniels in the middle, just taking up the middle.
Yeah, hard though,
so
man.
If that's Nash next year, or if it's someone that's not even on the team right now that ends up being a portal guy or whoever it is, it's going to be somebody that has to be able to man the middle, and the low guy wins in the line, in the trenches. I remember Rob Zaska telling us that right before the season started. Low man wins. That works on the offensive line. It works on the defensive line.
Mm-hmm.
So you got to get low. You got to get under. Got to get under guys. And if you're stiff and tall, you're probably going to get blown over. So, and that's irregardless of what your alignment is.
Yeah. So Boomer, I mean, if I want to be the cynic here and think about the 3-3-5 and say that we're going to have, I mean, I've heard things about 3-3-5 can capitalize on undersized guys that are athletic, but they're just not as big and they're tweeners and all that type of stuff. And I'm like, I listen to that and I'm like, is that going to win the Big Ten? I mean, the Big Ten is pretty much straightforward, right? I mean, like, you got to be a low man, but you also need to be big and strong. And sometimes what works in the Big 12 or at Syracuse in the Atlantic Coast Conference is not what's going to result in wins in the Big Ten. And you think of a team like Minnesota on week 1 who's going to look at a 3-3-5 and they're just going to freaking run right at you. So, I mean, like, how do you balance this new approach with the reality of the Big Ten, which is like, I mean, the thing is, the Big Ten, in my opinion, and if there's anything I've learned over the last 10 years of being in this conference, it's really good coaching going on here. I mean, and if you have a vulnerability, they are going to attack it. And so if they don't think we can stop the run, they're going to go after it.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting experiment, I think, how well this will work. It does seem to kind of, the needs of the 3-3-5 and what we know about it, like you said, Dave, it requires that kind of speedier, more athletic kind of player, and that seems to be what Rule likes to recruit. I mean, we've seen it just with who we've recruited already. They're going for those track style athletes, the smaller guys, the guys that may not have been the 5-star guys, the development thing. So that defensive philosophy seems to kind of tie in with what Rule likes as far as just players in general go with. So that kind of makes sense. Now, it will be interesting to see, like you said, how does it match up in the Big Ten? Because when you think about it, you got 3 down linemen. If you don't have a really solid nose tackle, like you said, to disrupt everything, and then if, your secondary has some trouble tackling or isn't quite what you want it to be, you're going to have some very big offensive linemen that are going to have plenty of time and be very free to smash things up as far as that goes. Now, the 3-3-5, my understanding is they line up, they don't take gaps. They line up directly on the offensive linemen. So you do have some opportunity to possibly confuse them, which gap you're going to, things like that. Mm-hmm. So, maybe those first few weeks it could be, we might have some advantages there. So it will be interesting to see how that matches up. And that's why it'll be fun to play Minnesota that first week, because that'll be a great test for how the Big Ten generally is going to work.
Mess around.
Well, it will also show.
But it is interesting, though, like you said, though, Dave, that, this matches up with Big 12 or ACC type teams. But you got Wisconsin who's bringing in North Carolina's offensive coordinator. So are they kind of switching to that sort of, offense?
Crazy, huh?
Maybe we're going to see more of that. And there's real kind of planning for this to play teams like Ohio State's and the pass-happy Purdue's and things like that more. I don't know. So, it'll be fascinating to see how this works. You
also kind of show your cards a little bit right away in week 1 that, to Rob's point about, that there was a lot of multiple formations and things that only, 40% of the time they ran 3-3-5. All right, well, Minnesota might be one of those games where if you've got heavy sets on defense, that might be the 1 or 2 times a year where you're going to pull that out. And that makes, look, that's part of game planning too. I mean, you can't just always line up against every team the same way, and that same defense that you can use to defend in Iowa or Minnesota maybe isn't the exact same one that you're going to turn around and use against a Michigan or an Ohio State. So,
and as we all know, if you come out in an even front when they expect an odd, you throw out half your playbook to start the game. So, I mean,
Boomer, that'll be enough of that. Okay,
as long as we never have that again, that would be and that gets to coaching, and we'll have plenty of time this offseason to talk about that. But does the staff give you confidence in what's being formed right now that we have, a staff that can go play for play against these staffs that have, a lot more experience, or guys that have been in the Big Ten for a while. Yeah. We went out and we got 2 sitting Power 5 coordinators on the offense and defense. I mean, these are guys, we got one from an SEC team and got one from an ACC team. And that's pretty impressive. They were younger guys, which is part of what Rule said right away that he wanted to get. So I don't have any major issue with that. I've watched some shows where people have already they've had an issue with Raiola being brought back. I think it's I want to see what these guys do together, and I want to see what Rule is looking for, because every guy that he got is somebody that he wanted. He didn't need to get any one of these guys. There was no one's forcing him to do it. No one forced him to get Raiola. He didn't have to.
Yeah, no, that's right.
That was by choice, and salary-wise, he's got the salary to give what he wants to give. So, I mean, the guys that he's getting are the guys that he wants. So,
yeah. I mean, that's a good point.
What he wants to do with them.
A couple things there. One, I'd be curious if they actually spent all $7 million. It kind of depends on what happens with the quarterback and wide receivers coach, but we're going to find out. I generally am okay with the OC and DC hires. Satterfield, again, I wish Jake Peets was coming here. I think the Peets element with Satterfield could have been really interesting. Hopefully there's a great QB coach that maybe is a pass game coordinator that really makes that sing. I'm intrigued with White. I don't know again, if the guy's running a 4-3 to Honky's point, I'd probably be more excited. But if you take away the actual scheme, I mean, his resume and everything else looks great.
I want to throw a question. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead. I just have one other point, but go fire away.
Okay, well, what about Satterfield? All these coaches have coached multiple positions in the past. Mm-hmm. What if Satterfield, instead of being the tight ends coach, was a quarterback coach, since Peets isn't coming here? What if, so your offensive coordinator ends up being your quarterback's coach? Happens all the time.
Which is typical. That'd be more typical than being a tight ends coach, that's for certain.
And so what would that open up? Imagine a second offensive line coach, maybe that also handled tight ends, okay, or something along those lines. But kind of the old Osborne thing about having 2 offensive line coaches and how beneficial that was to Nebraska for all those years. I'm just throwing that out there as an idea that
sure
right now is listed as OC and tight ends coach. But if he coached quarterback, since we didn't get Peets, that tight ends coach, you could easily hand that off to somebody else. Now you could also have the special teams coordinator, Ed Foley, could also coach tight ends, which he's done, I believe, in the past. So, I mean, there's things you could do there, but there's, really right now what we're missing in our coaching staff is we have 2 offensive hires that haven't been made yet. We don't have a wide receivers coach, and we don't have a QB coach right now. We don't have the linebackers coach officially, but it sounds like they kind of have the guy planned. So,
is there a reason why they can't announce that linebackers coach? That's been a little confusing.
I don't know the specifics behind why Dvorak or something is who.
It just seems like he's acting like the linebackers coach, but to your point, it seems like he's the linebackers coach, but we don't know yet, right?
Yeah, we don't know. But the thing is, how do you align your guys? Because really, I think everyone thought Peets was going to be the guy, and then for
background check or the drug test or something.
So for various reasons, whatever, Peets didn't accept it. He stayed it with the Rams.
Yeah, which is fine. I understand. I mean, he might be the OC of the Rams next year, right? I mean, the OC of the Rams did leave, and now, I mean, there could be other opportunities there. I don't want to talk about
the Rams right now.
All right, let's not talk about the Rams. So, I see where you're going, Honk. I mean, I think there's multiple options here for Rule. I still see potentially that there's a quarterback's coach that brings a little extra spice to the offense. But But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of opportunities out there, and the wide receivers coach is wide open as well. So I guess we're going to find out. The thing I wanted to talk about just a little bit is that, and again, I'm fine with the coordinator hires, generally speaking. The show that you guys did last week, that again I missed, I'm sorry, referenced, I can't remember who on Nebraska Sports Radio did the work on the Power 5 / NFL experience. Bishop. And I'm the point well taken, but I feel like what was missed in that evaluation and conversation was it took NFL experience across the board. Like, you're an NFL assistant coach, stop. That's all the same. Whereas Terrence Knighton, I think, what's his nickname? Pork Chop? I love that nickname. It's great. He's never actually led a position room before, right? And he obviously hasn't, recruited at the college level. I think NFL experience is excellent, and you're a full-time coach, and that's all you're doing. Raiola had that last year and the years before as a Chicago Bears assistant offensive line coach. Terrence Knighton was an assistant D-line coach. He was not the D-line coach at Carolina. It wasn't his position group, that it wasn't his room that he's running. There's a difference there, right? And so I don't know if that's really fair, right? I mean, I like guys that the guy at UConn, I'm going to miss his last name again, Rob. I'm sorry. EJ Barthel. I'll learn it. He's now our running backs coach. At least he ran his own room, right? He knows what he's doing. He is answering for the running back position performance. He's the guy, promoting those guys in the offense, etc. I mean, I don't know what Terrence Knighton did at Carolina, right? But he wasn't the guy that was responsible for the performance of the D-line. He was just assisting the guy who was, responsible for the D-line. So I'm really interested to see how those guys perform. I don't think it's an apples to apples comparison. So that's I just wanted to bring that up. Any other thoughts on that?
No, I mean, I think that's fair. I mean, if not all experience is the same. So if you're saying it's NFL experience, but you're not an assistant coach, then that's not apples to apples if you're comparing it with someone that was. So no, I mean, that's fair. Look, there's $7 million that was very clearly laid out that they have available to their staff. So to your point there, Dave, I mean, it'll be interesting to see, do they spend it all? But even whether they do or don't, this is the staff that he wants to build. So then it's I guess this is the challenge. If you if you look next year, this is where, the 2-10 first year thing, it would be a rough start. If we start 0-6, that's happened before, with a new staff, right? Yes. And if you do that, and it's because, and we're looking at it going, oh no, we've got youth and experience. I mean, I don't know. Now, I would say that this is definitely, from a coordinator standpoint, again, this is a better start that we have right now than what we had under Frost, bringing in basically Shenander and then himself as the OC. So, from that perspective,
that's exactly the point that I wanted to hammer home, Honk. So I appreciate it. Is that the $7 million is a top 10 coaching staff salary pool ballpark, right? When I heard that number, when the hire came out, I'm like, well, we should hire a top 10 coaching staff. Now, I don't know if Rule is going to be able to find 10 guys that was going to row the same direction that he wanted to row to be on his staff, to justify $7 million, right? I'm a little confused on why we needed $7 million if we're hiring a first-time defensive line coach and a first-time Power 5 running backs coach and so forth, right? I think you could have got the same staff for considerably less money. I've known this from me for a while, guys. I mean, like, this goes back to the Riley hire, where I was like, great, we're finally going to get a first-class coaching staff. And then he kind of brought in everybody that he knew from Oregon State. And, the same thing with Frost, where it's like, let's go. And I was a little more vocal in the Frost one, but, we kind of let it slide because, hey, they just went 13-0, and I'm not going to complain about this. But when you pay $7 million for your assistant coaching staff, you want guys that have done it before, right? And the fact that our D-line coach has never done it before, it's a little bit concerning, right? And so if we don't go 6-6 next year, that's going to be the stuff that bubbles up, right?
And there's a lot of unknowns right now. We don't know what they're getting paid yet. None of that's been released. We also are still 2 hires away from being done. I think some things have changed too since when they first threw those numbers out there. I mean, think about it. One of the guys that we talked about very much so right when that number was out there was Mickey, and that he'd be a big part of that, right? And he was a key part of it.
We're $2 million guys they may not have.
Yeah. So that's some things from that perspective have changed just in the last couple of weeks since the day that they hired him. Pete's and Mickey being 2 guys that we probably would have thought were going to be on the staff. So, but they are out there. They've obviously had a couple of big recruiting weekends here. They're doing some good things with recruiting. They're getting some guys to flip back. The Jamari Butler there. And I think that we'll see a couple of the guys, flip back. So, I mean, I don't know. It's hard right now to come to a conclusion on this because there's so many moving parts still with the staff and everything. I get it. The people that are, frustrated that they wanted bigger names. What I wanted to see was I wanted to see guys at the coordinator spot that had experience doing it. We've got that. At the position level, this has nothing to do with Raiola being experienced or inexperienced. I love the idea of 2 offensive line coaches. I just do. I mean, that mirrors exactly what Osborne told us and everything I've ever read, that it was a differentiator for us. I'd love to see us get back to that. I mean, but doubtful that's going to happen.
Well, I think it'll be interesting to kind of compare how this staff works out when you compare it. And we mentioned it earlier, Colorado. They do seem to be kind of going for that flashier, more heavy experience weighted kind of coaching staff than
that's true.
Has, at least in terms of
they're hiring head coaches to be their OC.
Well, yeah, and their DC too, because who is their defensive coordinator? Is it? Oh God, I can't even. Is it? Like a special, like tight ends coach Tim Brewster, wasn't he at Minnesota?
Yeah, he was at Minnesota.
Yeah, former head coach. Yeah,
you
could do that.
Taggart, we have the budget. Rumored to be going there, so they've got a lot of. I guess you want to call it flasher hires, and
sure.
Charles Kelly, I guess from Alabama, is going to be their, assistant D coordinator.
I think a lot of it is we'll find out. Like right now, this conversation looks very different in 10 months. If we struggle and we come out to that 0-6, sure. I mean, that's a problem, right? But there's nothing to say that what Dion's building there is going to work with a bunch of the guys either. It's so funny. People get upset about the buddy stuff, but yet, you want to, if someone's going to be doing a rebuild, you typically want to get some guys that you can trust. And I know Rule experienced that at the pros where he went out and got some guys that he didn't.
Yeah.
And that's part of his experience level right now is, when I went away from the guys I knew, I ran into trouble.
Yeah, so this is a great question. I know we probably want to talk about basketball a little bit, but I mean,
we'll probably pass on basketball tonight.
Last week's show, but I mean, this is a really interesting topic to me in the sense of I get what you just said there, Honk. I mean, that Rule wants guys that believe in his system, can follow along, that he trusts, and then to trust him, he needs to have experience with them, right? So he's bringing guys in that he's worked with before, and he's like, that's a guy that I trust that's going to help implement my system the way I see fit. Makes sense. I don't say that doesn't make sense from a leadership perspective. From a head coach, he also said when he got hired that he's like I chose to coach you, talking to the existing players. And so he's asking for patience and buy-in from the existing roster saying, hey, let me, come to you and introduce what I believe in, and I'm going to show you what I believe in my system, and we're going to get there together, right? And he's asking those players to buy into his system. It is a little bit interesting to me that he can't or doesn't is how to say this is not willing to take a risk on other good coaches that maybe he hasn't coached with before, but he doesn't know if he can convince them to fully buy into his system to coach the way he wants it to be coached, right? He has to hire somebody that he already knows will do what he wants done, right? It feels like he's asking the players to buy in, but he can't ask another assistant coach who maybe he doesn't have all the experience with to do the same thing. I'm a little confused on that.
I still feel like we're having a conversation that's too early to have, because there's multiple positions that haven't been hired yet, or there were things that went on even when he made some of those statements that you're talking about. Again, if he'd have hired Pete and if he'd have hired Joseph, those would have been two guys right off the top that he hadn't worked with, right? He hadn't worked with Pete. So, I mean, he's making statements.
Carolina connection there.
Yeah, but he was making statements there that were true.
He worked with Pete's 1 year, didn't he?
He might have worked with Pete's, but he didn't work with Joseph. And by all accounts, certainly was interested. It sounded like he was interested in working with Joseph. Was going to try to make that happen.
Yeah.
Obviously Raiola is someone that he did keep, so that's one of the coaches that he hasn't worked with before that he's keeping. One of the three coordinators he's going to have, the defensive coordinator, is somebody he's never worked with before, and he's bringing in from the outside. So, I mean, he has demonstrated already examples. Now the whole staff's not going to be a whole bunch of guys he hasn't worked with before.
No, I know. I appreciate the conversation, Hawk.
I think he's shown, and we'll see again because there's still a couple more positions left. Now, if I had any frustration just from, I'm surprised that we don't know who our full staff is right now. I don't know what we're waiting on with that. But I don't know how much that's hurting us from a recruiting standpoint, because if he's able to go and tell recruits, hey, for whatever reason, I can't publicly say that XYZ is this coach, but this is the guy that will be coaching you. And then if
I guess where I came up with this whole idea, Honk, to be honest with you, is Bill Bush. Because I'm like, if we don't have our linebackers coach announced, and Bill Bush is so committed to the state and the university, and he wants to live here. He's proven that he's a great coach. He's coached under multiple staffs and has been able to meld his way to do things. And he's a great recruiter who got Joe Burrow to LSU. I mean, like, how can you not take Bill Bush? I don't understand that. As a linebackers coach, you're still trying to fill it. Bill Bush should be recruiting right now. I don't get it.
I don't have a good answer to that, because he is, And
I'm just telling you. I mean, that doesn't make sense.
You hit me in a soft spot there, because my thoughts on Bush too. So I mean, he is
it's so logical, right? I mean, so I'm just really surprised. That's all.
Rob?
So I'm trying to think of like an analogy for Dave too, with like, okay, like if the coaches aren't if you're going to bring in coaches because you can't trust to bring in somebody new, but you expect these kids to buy in. I'm trying to think of like an analogy for it. And I'm almost thinking like, it's like if you're building a new business, or maybe like you're starting a new department at a college, right? You're going to bring in a bunch of people with PhDs who've been studying the same subject for years and years and years, to bring in like these undergrads and possibly grad students, and to teach them, right, this new subject, right? Like you're starting an entirely new department that nobody's ever had before, or, people may have an idea about, but, you're trying to bring in like a whole new class of students into this brand new department at this college, right? And all the people that you're bringing in are going to have to be people that have studied that subject for a long time in order to teach these kids the new subject, right? So, I mean, I can see why he would bring in a bunch of people that are familiar with his system, and maybe there's some other people that, White, right, is the one kind of outlier, sort of, while there are still some connections, but still he's an outlier for all intents and purposes, right? He hasn't coached with him before, but he still has kind of the experience that he's looking for in the recruiting, etc. But I think that he's trying to build a certain culture. A lot of these guys are familiar with that culture. And if you can get enough people at the top who believe in that culture already from the beginning, then it's going to be easier to convince these kids that, this is going to be the right fit for them and the right culture to, I guess,
yeah, no, I understand that. I understand. I appreciate that, Rob. Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, your leadership is aligned. It's going to be easier to convince the workers per se, right? I mean,
and eventually, I mean, after year 1, year 2, year 3, we're going to see some changes in that staff, some tweaks. Maybe he does bring in some guys he's never coached with before because he realizes, okay, I'm going to need to make this adjustment. I'm just,
Yeah, we can move on. Again, I apologize for missing last week because I felt like there was a lot to share. But I mean, like my point here is that I feel like why I think it might be a worse season in year 1 than I think it should be is because of that. There's this element of transition that I think is going to happen with the rule regime, which I think you could patch together something where you get to 6 wins just by de facto because we're just more talented. But I don't know if that's going to be the way rule runs things, right?
Well, so I think we're going to find out, and we'll find out very early because the I don't know analogy, but we should beat Colorado. By all means, anybody watching a Colorado team coming off of 1-11 struggles that they've had to play them in week 2, you have a perfect opportunity to see how for 2 different coaching staffs what they did to rebuild in one off season. And if we go down there and if we look outclassed against Colorado, that's a first year problem. We shouldn't be outclassed when we go and play Colorado. And and I'm not saying we're going to be. I'm just that shouldn't happen. And Dion has gone out there and hired former head coaches to be his coordinators. I mean, they were splashier hires for what it's worth, but what Rule said also on day 1, because we're kind of referencing things he said, he also said he was going to hire young guys. That was something right away. He's going to hire guys that a lot of them have been recruiting coordinators. A lot of them, that's where what he said he wanted to hire is what he's gone out and hired. So that's pretty much where we're at. But the proof is going to be, on the scoreboard. We'll find out here, and we'll find out very early.
Yep, absolutely. Well, it's going to be interesting next few weeks with recruiting. Honky, do you just want to even just touch on basketball for 2 minutes? You were at the game on over the weekend, right?
Yeah, it was. I like how this team plays. They're fun to watch. They're not. A coworker of mine has said forever. He's like, to win this league, you need to have NBA talent. Well, this team doesn't have that. Previous Nebraska teams did, and were a lot worse than this one. This is a good team, but I think we lack, that 1 or 2, one guy that maybe is that when we need an absolute point score, that this guy can consistently do it time and time again. Now we have guys that have stepped up in different games, and that's awesome. It's great, but there's a moment where it's like, gosh, we need 1 point and we need one guy to score it. I almost wish we could just take Bryce McGowan's off the bench for for a minute at a time, score the point, and then go back, get back off the court, because these guys play so well together. It's team basketball. It's tough nosed defense. I do love watching it. Wish that, and they rebound. I just wish that we could shoot a little better when we really need to get a point.
Yeah, we're gonna find out. Boomer. So we have K-State on Wednesday. And then Queens College, is that right?
Yeah, which we believe is somewhere in England from the last time we checked. So, yeah, we're just going to go with that.
So, I've been trying to do the math on this, and anybody else can fill in. So, we've already played 2 of our 20 Big Ten games. Is that right?
Correct.
20-game conference schedule. And so, if we could happen to beat K-State and then Queens College, glory be to God, we'd be 8-4.
Correct.
With 18 games to go.
No, we've lost 5 games. We'd be 8-5.
Yeah, there we go.
8-5. Okay, that makes it even tougher. I'm just trying to figure out how many games we need to win in the Big Ten with 18 to go to get to 500. Because if you're 500, then you can play NIT. Keep in mind you have a Big Ten conference tournament that you need to go 1-1 in, I guess, to stay 500. But I'm just trying to, math-wise, we're 0-2 already. Can we get there with an 8-12 record? Essentially, can we get there with a 7-13 record? It sounds like 8-12 wouldn't even get us there. We have to go 9-11. Is that right? Which means
Sounds
9 out of the next. 9 out of the next 18.
Well,
wow,
the key would be winning the games at home court. I think would be the starter. I mean, you saw how electric that crowd could be against Purdue.
Now we have 9 Big Ten home games left.
Yeah, so I think I'm not saying you're going to win all those, but if you have a good chance at them, that gives you a good opportunity to win some of those games.
So 6-3 maybe on that.
Ohio State at home.
I was just trying to give Honky a nugget where we could get to the NIT. I don't know if it's plausible.
Yeah, and then I mean, there's possibilities there. I mean, we get Penn State twice. They're okay, but they're not world beaters. You get Minnesota twice, so there are opportunities for multiple wins in conference, at least. And like I said, you pick up some of those, you win the majority of those home games. This team has something there. They're much more fun to watch than Husker teams have been as of late.
Without scoring as many points.
Yeah, which is crazy. I mean, it's not Doc Sadler depression watching it, but they're fun to watch at least. And I went into that Purdue game expecting absolutely nothing, and exited just completely pissed off at referees and stuff like that. And they got me emotionally invested again. They drew me back in just when I didn't think it would matter anymore.
You took the refereeing really personal, which I don't blame you because it was bad.
Yeah, that was really bad, and
they screwed us out of a win.
Yeah, but Bohannon of Iowa even said it was a crap call. Yeah, I mean that tells you what it was, and it got a few Twitter spats with people over that saying, "Well, sure, the refereeing was bad, but they missed their chances."
Could have won other ways, yes.
Yeah, we did miss chances to win that game, but who else missed a lot of chances to win that game? Purdue. They were like 0 for 11 towards the end of that game shooting, but they get bailed out by the refs in that game.
And now they're number one in the country.
Yeah, now they're number one in the country. That makes a big difference when refereeing sucks.
Arizona.
I mean, both teams did a lot to lose that game and missed lots of chances to just straight up win it. But one team got a heck of a lot of benefits in it and got calls going their way.
Now, Rob, I did win. I rarely bet on Nebraska on anything, but I took the 8.5 points
that was a smart
in this
bet,
game, and that was a very smart bet. That was an easy victory. To your point, I mean, you put a lot into Purdue is a Final Four type team. Probably the best team in the Big Ten. Has your expectations changed?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that we can go 500, if not better, in the rest of the league based off of the schedule. The way that losing to Indiana the way they did, they played with them pretty well. Like 75% of the game they kept up, and then playing Indiana in Indiana, that's never an easy game, regardless of what year it is. Really, even when Indiana's bad, right? Their home record is generally pretty good. Almost beating Purdue, who then gets ranked number 1 in the country by barely beating, a historically poor program in Nebraska. I'm still really confused on the whole how that happened sort of thing.
Point of the year, just default. There's no.
Yeah, I know it's default. I know it's default. I get that. I just I'm just trying to figure it out. And sorry if I keep looking over my shoulder here, but Creighton is down 1 with 21.6 seconds, and Arizona State has the ball to coached by the great Bobby.
Ruined Creighton basketball, Rob.
Yeah, well, you know what? Maybe Creighton or Nebraska will be again like what teams did in football, right? Like,
is this the curse?
Yeah, it's the curse right now. Maybe Purdue's going to lose their next 6 games.
That's right.
I think if we learned anything, though, that loss to Indiana, not having Sam there in the first 3 or 4 or 5 games, whatever the season was, where we didn't have Walker. I mean, it's important that we have those 2 guys, that we need those guys to be healthy and playing. That's the one thing that we can least afford right now. And so, heaven forbid, knock on wood and everything, not having any injuries, we at the very least need to be at full strength as we get into the meat of the Big Ten schedule here going into next year. But these next 2 games, I mean, yeah, that K-State game feels a lot like a must win, and Queens too.
Must win from a get to the postseason type idea.
Yeah.
And when we talk about postseason, we're talking NIT here.
Yeah, is Walker becoming the Walker actually is? That's not even a question. I'm never going to pose a rhetorical question here. Walker is becoming the type of player that I wanted him to be last year more. Like he is this year. He's kind of that guy in the middle that may not be as tall as the big guys, but he's got the body and the strength to really just go there and go to the board.
It's the smarts too. I mean, it's
oh my God, his play this year is actually making Nebraska basketball fun, because that inside out game, everything. If Tominaga could just be more consistent, they would be one of the better teams in the Big Ten, because if he could hit Griesel, if he could be a little bit more consistent, I really like his game, but he also kind of needs somebody else on the outside to open up, his ability to either take that mid-range shot or he needs somebody to open it up so he can take that 3-pointer or like dribble it in a couple steps for that mid-range shot and consistently hit it. And with Walker on the inside there, like I said, it only takes 2-3 consistent players on a team like in the Big Ten.
We're going to see. So, yep. All right. I know we're running along, so let's start getting out of here a little bit. Honky, anything else before we hit the parting shots?
No, I think that's all.
Vegas Jer saying it's a marathon show. I apologize, Vegas Jer. I just had to ask some questions. I needed some answers, man. All right, let's get out of here. Let's start with Rob.
Well, I would just like to say that I'm super proud of our volleyball team and the effort that they put in this year. They lost basically the quarterback of their team towards the end of the season, which is never in any sport. It's never, easy to do. They gave brilliant effort. Enjoyed watching every single minute of it. I'm really looking forward to next year because they're a super young team. I'm looking forward to this basketball season with Nebrasketball. I'm hoping to see them actually make the actual NCAA tournament, because NCAA tournament does look at quality losses. And I'm also looking here with no time left on the clock. It looks like Creighton has lost to Arizona State.
Wow. All right. All right, Boomer.
Well, first thing, I did want to remind our listeners for our competitions, we still have some glossies of Honky eating shrimp. So if anyone does want some of those, I can certainly.
It's like week-old shrimp right there, I think.
Yeah, I can certainly arrange to have those autographed and given out as prices as well if you're interested in one of those. So, and the best part is you could have it autographed by any one of the Redcast. It doesn't have to be Honky. It could be a picture of Redcast Honky eating shrimp signed by Redcast Rob. I mean, who wouldn't want something like that? So.
I think Honky.
I might have the best signature of the group, really.
Honky got turned down for an autograph this week, I think.
Well, I mean, I wouldn't want it either. That's fair.
Yeah.
But,
I'm good, thanks.
Yeah, on a more mellow note, I think most of our listeners are aware of the health issues with Mike Leach. It's sounding fairly grim just from what we know, tonight. And, regardless of what team he's been on, he's just been enjoyable to watch in his press conferences and his dealing with media and fans, and just always been just entertaining as a coach, as someone on media, and just being willing to just talk about anything and just put his heart into anything he talks about. So, we'd like to hope something good comes of it. We don't know if it will, but, the thoughts certainly go out to, to Leach and his family and, the entire Mississippi State nation at this point. So.
Yep, absolutely. All right, Honky, get us out of here.
Yeah, I want to echo Boomer there. And one of the things about Leach that was he had such a unique style. There's nobody like him. He was it. And the things that he did, and today he brought a lot of fun to college football where, everything's kind of corporate and stodgy and you're careful with what you say and all that. And he just goes out there, and Boomer was sending us videos today of some of his press conferences and just some of his all-time greats. So, I guess I'll turn this to Husker football a little bit on my parting shot. When we talk about style and coach, one thing about Rule, I didn't realize this about Rule nearly as much until he actually got here. I didn't know how he talked and everything. He is, a son of a preacher man. He is, he goes out and evangelizes about things, and I made a statement when we were looking for a coach. I didn't have a name. I didn't know who it would be, but I referenced Devaney his first offseason when he came here. He needed to make Nebraska fans feel good after 20 years of losing, and that's what Devaney did. He went around the state, and he went to every little nook and cranny and talked to fans and just told them how important they were, right? And if you go out and lose a whole bunch of football games, it's a moot point, but it was still, that was something that was important at that time. I see Rule being a really capable coach of that right now, of just making fans hopefully start to feel good about things. You can even disagree with something schematically he's doing, and yet you listen to him, you go, holy smokes, man. I mean, that's a positive right now. I mean, the guy that can, talk himself into, not being terrible at every press conference and everything. I mean, that's a strength there. So anyways, I'm excited to see him get done with the staff. Hopefully we'll have a full staff to talk about here by the next Redcast. And but other than that, just go Big Red.
Absolutely. All right. Good stuff, guys. We're working our way into bowl season. Maybe we'll get some best bets out there via Twitter, but I don't think we need to take a dive into it tonight. So for now, let's call that a Go Big Redcast.
Go Big Red.
GBR.